I'm Peyton. Sitting here in this quiet courtroom, watching the judge issue rulings that will change my family's dynamics forever, it's hard not to let my mind wander back to that fateful Christmas Eve. The courtroom is silent, save for the judge's words, as I reflect on how I got to this point, a journey that began with a simple drive through a raging snowstorm. I grew up in a small coastal town in Oregon, where my family had a charming seafood restaurant passed down through generations. My parents, Isaac and Elise, were the heart of the place. Isaac was a jovial man who seemed to know everyone in town. He had a way with customers, making them feel like part of the family. Elise was the meticulous one, handling the books and making sure everything ran smoothly. My older brother, Jake, and his wife, Stacy, also worked at the restaurant. Jake was always full of grand ideas about expanding the business, but he often lacked the follow-through. Stacy was sharp-tongued and ambitious, always looking for ways to elevate the family's status. I, on the other hand, had moved to Seattle for a job as a fraud analyst at a major bank. I worked long hours, but I found fulfillment in uncovering financial irregularities. Even with the distance, I never forgot my family. Every month, I sent money to help with the restaurant's bills because my parents always sounded worried about making ends meet. I subscribed to the false narrative that I was being a good daughter, supporting my family in their time of need. That Christmas Eve, there was a blizzard warning, but I didn't care. I had presents in the back of my car and a delicious seafood platter I'd prepared myself. I drove for 6 long hours through the howling wind and heavy snow, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. All I could think about was the look on my family's faces when I walked in. I hoped this year, they'd finally be happy to see me. As I pulled into the parking lot behind the restaurant, the lights were on, and I could hear laughter and music. It seemed like a warm, joyous gathering. I stepped out of the car, snowflakes sticking to my hair, and made my way to the back door. I knocked, my heart pounding with anticipation. Jake opened the door a crack, peeked out at me, and then glanced at my car. He let out a laugh, the kind that made me feel like an outsider. "You really don't get it, do you? It's family only tonight," he said. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. I stood there, holding the seafood platter, my presents in the car. No one came to the door to greet me, no one called my name. Jake closed the door softly, and the silence that followed was deafening. I walked back to my car in a daze. 20 minutes later, while sitting in a gas station parking lot, my heater barely working, my phone lit up with a text from Isaac. "Unbelievable. She actually thought she'd be welcome," it read. I stared at those words until all the hope and warmth inside me turned to ice. I opened my banking app and started canceling every automatic payment connected to the restaurant. There was the monthly $300 for the fire insurance, $500 towards the new kitchen equipment Jake had bought on credit, and a long list of other expenses I'd been covering. I'd spent years telling myself I was helping, but at that moment, I realized real families didn't treat you like this. The drive back to Seattle felt like an eternity, even though the storm had started to subside. I didn't cry, I didn't call anyone. I just drove, understanding for the first time that trying to explain my pain to those who had caused it would only give them another chance to hurt me. When I got home, I opened my laptop and started downloading all the payment records and receipts. I put them in a folder named Christmas. I thought it was just a way to protect myself emotionally, but little did I know it would be crucial evidence. A few days later, I received an email from a bank in Oregon. It was a notice about a loan refinancing application for the restaurant. Under the financial guarantor section was my name. I had never signed anything, never agreed to be involved. This was no longer just a family argument, it was fraud. That Christmas Day, I was alone in my apartment. I made myself breakfast and realized I had no idea what I liked to do when I wasn't catering to my family's needs. That realization scared me more than anything. I'd let my life revolve around them, forgetting to build a life for myself. I decided to change. I bought a small basil plant from the grocery store downstairs and named it Luna. I signed up for a painting class and started going to the gym. It was tough at first, but I felt more alive than I had in years. Back at work, my job as a fraud analyst made me even more determined to get to the bottom of the loan application. I called the bank and asked for any documents with my consent. The representative hesitated when I gave my name, which told me all I needed to know. She said the application was in progress and my name was listed as support, but the signed authorization was pending review. I knew that meant something wasn't right. I started a new folder on my laptop called Evidence and began collecting every piece of evidence I could find. Emails, voicemails, and old receipts. I was building a case, though I wasn't sure where it would lead. Near the end of January, Elise called me. Her voice was weak and nervous. "Peyton, I didn't know you came on Christmas Eve. There are things going on with the restaurant, and I'm not sure what I signed," she whispered. I asked her to start from the beginning. She told me that on Christmas Eve, she was in the office when I knocked. Jake told her it was a delivery. Stacy said not to worry. Isaac knew it might be me, but he didn't come to the door. That hurt more than I could bear. Isaac had always been the one I thought was fair. She then told me about the papers Jake and Stacy had been making her sign. They said the restaurant needed modernization and that putting it under an LLC would protect the family. Elise didn't understand what it all meant, but they convinced her everyone, including me, was on board. I asked her if she wanted to transfer the restaurant. After a long pause, she said, "No. This is our family's legacy. I don't want to lose it." I asked where Isaac stood, and she sighed. "He thinks Jake knows better about business." I almost laughed. Jake knew how to take risks and make others pay for them, but business required responsibility. Elise sent me pictures of the documents. There was a management agreement, a power of attorney, and a refinancing authorization. There was also a reference to a company called Coastal Delights LLC, registered to Stacy. I dug deeper. Public records showed they were trying to take over the restaurant's finances without anyone's knowledge. Jake and Stacy were using the restaurant as a stepping stone to their own dreams, leaving my parents and the family business at risk. I told Elise not to sign anything else and not to tell Jake and Stacy I knew. I needed to gather more evidence. 2 weeks later, I drove back to my hometown under a clear blue sky. I parked behind the restaurant, took my folder of evidence, and walked in. Jake opened the door, his face showing a hint of surprise. "Well, look who decided to drop by," he said, forcing a smile. I said, "I need to talk to Mom." Stacy appeared behind him. "She's resting," she said. "Then let her tell me that herself," I replied. They exchanged a panicked look. Inside, Isaac was sitting at a table, avoiding my gaze. Elise was on the couch. When she saw me, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and shame. I sat down and placed the papers on the table. "Mom, did you know these papers could transfer control of the restaurant to Coastal Delights?" I asked gently. She looked at the papers and then at me. "No, they said it was for repairs and taxes," she replied. I asked, "Did you know Coastal Delights is registered to Stacy?" Her face changed as the truth sank in. Jake stepped forward. "This is crazy. You're twisting things," he said. Stacy added, "We were just trying to help. You've been off in Seattle, only showing up when you feel like it." I looked at her. "I showed up on Christmas Eve. You left me outside." She rolled her eyes. "You weren't invited." I snapped. "That's not the same thing. You've been using my name and money for your own gain. The insurance, the new equipment payments, everything was on me. And you're trying to take over the restaurant without Mom and Dad's full understanding." Isaac finally spoke. "Peyton, maybe this isn't the time." I turned to him. "When would be the time, Dad? Before or after they ruin the family business?" Stacy said, "Your name was on the loan because you've always helped with the restaurant." I laid the bank email on the table. It means something when a bank thinks I'm guaranteeing a loan I never approved. And Mom, signing papers you don't understand is dangerous. Jake snapped, "You think you're so smart just because you work at a bank." I retorted, "No, I'm smart because I finally stopped trusting people who only call me when they need money." Stacy stepped in front of him. "You liked being the hero. Now you're mad because we had one Christmas without you." I laughed bitterly. "You had Christmas paid for by me. The seafood, the decorations, it was all on my card. You excluded me because you thought I'd keep paying even when you made it clear I wasn't part of the family." At that moment, Stacy lost her temper. "Fine. You were never the daughter they loved. You were just the bank account we called when things got tough." The room fell silent. Jake looked at her as if she'd gone too far, but he didn't deny it. I had my phone recording the whole conversation. I'd told them before I started. I stopped the recording and stood up. "Good. Then from now on, that account is closed." I gathered my papers and said, "Monday morning is going to be a busy day for all of you." With that, I walked out of the restaurant, knowing my life had changed forever. On Monday, I sent a formal dispute letter to the bank, asking for a fraud review and halting the loan. I then contacted a local lawyer, Nora Thompson, who specialized in elder financial exploitation. I sent her all the evidence I'd collected. Within 48 hours, the bank froze the loan application, the credit line for the new equipment went past due, and Jake and Stacy started to panic. They called me multiple times, but I didn't answer. A week later, Nora filed for an emergency hearing. Elise bravely agreed to give a statement. Isaac wasn't happy, saying I was causing trouble, but I knew the truth was on my side. Before the hearing, Stacy sent a long message to the family group chat, trying to paint me as the bad guy. But the cousins in the chat started asking questions, and she couldn't control the narrative anymore. The hearing was short but impactful. Nora presented the evidence calmly. When the recording of Stacy's outburst played in the courtroom, the silence was palpable. The judge ordered a full review of the loan application and the documents Elise had signed. He recognized Elise's right to revoke any authority she'd given under false pretenses. In the end, the loan application was canceled, and Coastal Delights LLC's attempt to take over the restaurant failed. Jake and Stacy lost their credibility in the town. Jake had to roll up his sleeves and actually work in the restaurant, and Stacy stopped acting so high and mighty. Isaac lost some of his authority. Elise opened separate accounts for the restaurant and hired an independent accountant. She started making decisions based on her own understanding. My relationship with Elise has improved. She calls to ask about my painting classes and Luna, my basil plant. I help her manage the finances properly, but I've set clear boundaries. The next Christmas, I was back at the restaurant. Families were enjoying the seafood, and snow was falling gently outside. Elise looked at me and said, "I used to think peace meant keeping everyone happy, even if I had to sacrifice myself. Now I know it means standing up for what's right." I nodded. I'd learned the hard way that family is important, but not when it comes at the cost of your dignity and well-being. I finally found my own peace by walking away from the door that had been closed on me and stepping into a life where I'm valued. Would you have done the same if you were in my shoes? Or would you have given them one more chance?